Hi, welcome to my channel. I have a special treat for you today. I have just completed a novelette. It's called An Unexpected Blessing, and you get to hear the first 3 chapters for free. If you'd like to hear the rest of the story, then subscribe to my newsletter and I will send that right out to you. If you like this channel, please hit that subscribe button and get notifications by hitting that little bell. Enjoy the story.
An Unexpected Blessing. A Sweethearts Cafe Romance Series. By Betsy Love. Chapter 1. Emma girl, you're going to wear a hole in the table if you keep wiping like that. Olivia, my boss, and owner of Miracle Inn Cafe, put her hand over mine. Sorry. I gripped the rag and sat in the booth, looking around the nearly empty, post-breakfast diner I'd been working at since I graduated high school. Then Olivia had bought the diner last year. She'd wanted to make so many changes, but her husband's life insurance policy had left her with only enough to buy the only real restaurant in town. It probably didn't matter that it looked old and outdated since it was the best place to eat, especially with Olivia's cooking. I looked up at the plaque hanging over the register. The saying fit me perfectly. Don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life like a champion. Muhammad Ali. Yeah, right. How much suffering had I already experienced? First my daddy, then my barrel horse, and now my stupid ex-boyfriend. He'd given me the perfect reason to follow Mama's advice and dump him. Was I ready to admit I would remain single the rest of my life? Was I too young to worry about being a spinster? I mean, women got married later and then started their families, right? 22 was way too young to be old, wasn't it? It's just that the only boyfriend I'd ever had was Drew. A knot formed in my stomach. Olivia slid into the booth across from me. What's up, girl? Was I ready to share Drew's cheating on me yet? I hadn't even told my mother what had happened. I took a deep breath. People would learn soon enough. Since my mama had become best friends with Olivia, she wouldn't hesitate to go right to her with my news. Mama would actually be relieved. She'd already been asking questions about why Drew hadn't been around much. May as well take the first step in making the breakup official. I opened my phone and pushed it over to Olivia. This. The knife twisted in my gut. The picture had come to me from an anonymous source. The platinum blonde laying her lips on Drew roiled my insides, like a calf getting lassoed. He'd been hinting he was going to propose to me, and now this. Whoa, girl. When did this happen? Almost 2 weeks ago. You didn't say anything to your mother, or she would have told me. Olivia pushed a brown strand of hair from her brow and studied the photo. That woman's not from around here, and that doesn't look like Mickey's bar. She handed the phone back. Drew said he had to go to Houston on business. I stared at the picture for the 100th time, trying to come up with a logical explanation. I didn't even have a clue as to who would have sent the picture. Well, there's only one thing you can do. Give up on men altogether? They're all cheaters. My daddy had told me time and time again, if he ain't faithful, he ain't worth keeping. Too bad he died before he had a chance to warn me about Drew. Olivia slapped the table. No ma'am, you are not going to do that. I know this great dating app. When I opened my mouth to speak, Olivia held up her hand. Just hear me out. It will only connect you with single men within our area, no need to leave the state or travel too far. My brother used it last year and found the woman of his dreams. I'm not ready to start looking. If God wanted her to find a husband, he better drop him in her lap. Olivia stood and picked up the rag. Well, while you're fretting, I've got a restaurant to run, and you have a customer at table 9 waiting for you to take his order. The man looked familiar, but I couldn't pinpoint where I'd seen him before. Certainly, not from around here. Dressed like that, he was probably a businessman passing through town on his way to or from somewhere like Houston or Dallas. Every strand of his city haircut lay perfectly in place. His smooth hands didn't look like they'd done a lick of hard labor. I crossed to his table, and when he looked up at me, his dark chocolate eyes melted right into my soul, something warm and familiar, like I'd known him forever. So different than Drew's pale blue eyes and rough hands. Clearing my throat, I tried to rid the sudden, odd attraction I had for him. Not that I'd dream of kissing his perfect lips, without even a hint of a mustache. Drew's mustache constantly tickled my lips, and I'd suggested more than once that he shave it off. Why was I comparing this customer to my boyfriend? Heat crept up my face, and I had to look down at my pad of paper. "Hi, sugar, what can I get for you?" The man handed his menu back to me. "Just a BLT and a Coke." "I'll get that right out to you." Without thinking, I touched his hand and immediately withdrew it. Daddy had also warned me about men with that indentation on their wedding finger. It said he was either recently divorced, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but he could be someone who took it off to pick up women. His eyebrows shot up in surprise, and his gaze went to his hand where I'd touched him. Hopefully, he'd only think that was Texas hospitality, and a way to get big tips. I hurried back to the server's counter and called, "BLT," then put the order slip on the wheel, before going to the soda fountain. Planting a smile on my face, I returned to table 9, then set the Coke in front of him and laid a straw next to it. "Here's your drink, sugar." Hospitality always got big tips, but would he think I was flirting? He looked up at me. "Thanks." Again, those chocolate brown eyes almost swallowed me whole. I'll bet all the women fell in love with his eyes. With a quick tap of the straw on the table, he pushed the wrapper back. "So, do they still have the rodeo every weekend? The one at the Barzy Ranch?" The memory of barrel racing there shot pangs of longing through me. Sometimes, I wished the rodeo disappeared altogether, since Mama had had to sell my horse along with several others to help pay for my daddy's funeral and catch up on bills that had piled up. Losing Star Dancer was as painful as losing Daddy. Luke nodded. "Did I trigger a bad memory for you?" "Oh, the rodeo, sorry. I was just thinking about my horse." "You do remember Zeke, the owner of the ranch, the guy who runs the rodeo?" "Anyway, he bought my barrel racer. Her name's Star Dancer. I'm just glad someone who loves horses as much as I do purchased her. She is an amazing animal." "I'll bet you were amazing, too." His fair skin turned a soft shade of pink. "I mean, writing, that is." Tucking my hand in my pocket, I twiddled the pencil laying there. I did all right. Why was I even telling him about my horse? He didn't need to hear my woes. "If you show up early enough, you can watch the kids chase greased pigs." Then, to change the subject, I asked, "How long are you planning on staying in Miracle?" "Not sure. I'm glad to know Zeke still has the spring rodeos." The man stared up at me as if puzzling something. "How do you know about Zeke's rodeos?" I asked. "I used to live here when I was a teen." He pointed to my name tag. "And you're Trevor and Tyler's kid sister, Emma Clark." "Do I know you?" "Lucas Blessing, Luke for short." My heart puddled in my stomach. All those memories came flooding back. I'd had a crush on him for as long as I could remember. I'd followed my brothers around wanting to do everything they did, just because Luke showed up to hang out with them. Wow, he had sure changed since junior high. "What brings you back here?" He paused for a moment. "Investment. I came to look at a ranch." "Who's selling?" "Most of the ranches went generations back." Luke swallowed. "I'm not at liberty to say." I tried to imagine who might be in financial trouble. I picked up the wrapper and tucked it in my apron. "Where did you end up settling down?" "I'm actually living in Austin now. After my father passed, he left me a huge sum and I bought a ranch there. I sold it a couple weeks ago and thought I'd move back." "Are your brothers still living here?" "Trevor married a girl he met in college. They live in Houston and have 2 girls. They're hoping the one they're expecting is a boy. Tyler was closer to my age. He never married. He's living in California." She leaned to whisper. "But we try not to hold it against him." Luke chuckled. That she remembered. Not much has changed out at the Bar Z, including the dance each weekend night after the rodeo. You gonna be there? Was that a suggestion that he might want to meet me? Could I allow myself to think about another relationship? What if he was a player, as his ring finger hinted? I shook my head. No, I have to work. Lots of people come in for Zeke's rodeo, and we're going to be pretty busy feeding all the cowboys. Disappointment crossed his face and disappeared faster than maple syrup on a hot waffle. We'll have to catch up later. He rubbed the indentation on his ring finger. A married man wouldn't draw attention to it. Maybe you can stop by the house before you have to go back. I'm sure Mama would like to say hello. I couldn't even explain why part of me wanted to see him again. I doubted whether Mama would even remember him. That had been nearly 15 years ago. That would be nice. You still live down the road? Yeah. Same old house, same old barn. Except more aged and worn. That smile. Exactly like I remembered. I'll probably be in for breakfast tomorrow. Will I see you then? His eyes looked hopeful, like Daisy, her basset hound waiting for table scraps. I wanted to say yes. Before I could answer, the bell from the kitchen rang. Order up, Armando, the assistant chef, called over the counter between the galley and the kitchen. That's probably your sandwich. My heart wasn't paying attention to what my brain was saying. I turned to leave, but Luke caught my hand. I'm serious about getting together. Looking down at his grip and back up at him, I raised my eyebrows, and he released my hand. I was still stinging from Drew's betrayal and shouldn't even be thinking about another relationship. I practically bolted for the kitchen. Passing Olivia, her eyes met mine. Had she been watching our interaction? What would she tell Mama? That I'd broken up with Drew and was already flirting? Yet, I had to admit, Luke's touch had warmed my skin and shot little pulses up my arm. In the galley, I stopped Cassie. Hey, would you mind trading tables with me? I'll take your burger if you'll take the BLT to that man over there. I pointed to Luke. She'd picked up the platter for her customer on the opposite side of the diner. You know, if you weren't so gosh darn purty, the guys would stop hitting on you. Cassie picked up the sandwich. Just tell him you have a boyfriend. Cassie must have read the pleading in my eyes. Oh, all right. She handed the platter to me. But I get your tip. Thanks, you're a gem. I delivered the plate to Cassie's customer. I took a quick peek at Luke, who'd struck up a conversation with Cassie. Apparently, he didn't care who he could get to go out with him. At least, that's what it looked like by the way Cassie laughed and joked with him, flirted rather. But then it was like her to act that way with all her male customers. Married or not, that's how she got the big tips. When Cassie returned to the galley, she was still laughing. For a city boy, he's pretty witty. So, did he ask you to go to the rodeo with him? I nodded in his direction. I take it you did see the mark of a ring on his finger? That doesn't necessarily mean anything. Cassie wrapped a napkin around some silverware. He asked about you, though. I let out a huff of disgust. I hope you told him I'm not available. I did, but he said he didn't see no ring on your finger. Cassie pointed to my hand where I clutched my phone. I wiggled my hand, mimicking an English accent. I doth not see a ring upon fair lady's finger. So, when is Drew going to propose to you? I know you haven't been dating all that long, but you know, you're not getting any younger. I put my finger over Cassie's lips. Thanks for the reminder. I have to hear it from my mother all the time. I don't need you to join the pack of finger-pointing old maids. Hey, I am not an old maid, yet. Cassie waved her hand in the air as she returned to the meal counter to pick up her next order. Chapter 2. At the end of my shift, I snuck into the back office and slipped on my jacket while Olivia was distracted with a customer. If Olivia had her way, she'd corner me again and persuade me to download that Kismet app. What a dumb name. Like anyone could find their destiny through online dating. I barely reached the door when Olivia hollered, "Come back here." I've got something we need to discuss. Ugh. I'd almost made it. I dipped my head and made a slow turn to face my employer. Just because Olivia was my boss at Sweethearts didn't mean she could boss me around in my personal life. Can it wait until tomorrow? I'm exhausted. With my hand still on the door handle, all I wanted to do was make a quick escape. Olivia charged over to me like a bronco out of the gate. No, you need to do this right now. I dropped my hand. I'm tired. When Olivia got something in her head, she wouldn't let it go. This won't take long. Olivia gestured to an empty booth. You better be paying overtime. Though I knew she wouldn't. How about as a bonus for me helping you, I'll let you come in tomorrow however long this takes. Fine, I grumbled under my breath and settled into the seat expecting Olivia to sit across from me. Olivia motioned for me to slide over, then opened her hand and wiggled her fingers to turn over my phone to her. With resignation, I plopped it in her outstretched hand. Olivia swiped up and unlocked the screen. You know, you ought to put a security code on your phone just in case someone wanted to hack into it. Like you're doing now? I should. I know. My mama gets after me, too. If I had any guts at all, I'd stand up to Olivia and not let her do this. Olivia went to the Play Store and downloaded the Kismet app. Now then, let's fill in your profile. I reached out my hand to take the phone back. I can do that later. Olivia pressed it to her chest. I know you won't do it. So, I'll fill in the answers for you. Dang. She knew I wouldn't. Age? Olivia asked, but typed in 22 before I could answer. Gender, female, of course. Occupation, here she paused. I wonder if we could call you something more glamorous than waitress. How about we trade places? You be the waitress, and I'll be the owner and boss you around. I was half serious. Maybe then Olivia would leave my love life alone. Great idea. Olivia entered entrepreneur/restaurant owner. I tried to snatch the phone from Olivia, but the woman was too quick and held it away. Nobody ever tells the truth in these things anyway. When I got home, I'd just change all the entries to match who I really was. Heck, I would even delete the whole app. Knowing Olivia, though, she'd check the next morning. If my boss wasn't best friends with my mama, then maybe I'd be able to stand up to her. Hobbies. Olivia poised her thumbs over the keyboard. We need something really interesting. I don't have much of a life outside of work anymore, you know. I pointed to the pin under my name tag. The words Rodeo Queen were engraved around a horseshoe with a cowgirl hat over the top. That was my last claim to almost fame, even if my daddy was the only one who called me princess. Yeah, but honey, that was over 5 years ago. I'd still like to barrel race someday. I hadn't done that in 5 years either, not since I lost Star Dancer. We need something to draw a gentleman in, and I don't think barrel racing will do even if you still had your horse. It's Texas, Olivia. Most men are accustomed to the fact that cowgirls dominate here, especially out here in the country. Kind of hard to do without a horse. Olivia twitched her mouth to the side. All right, we'll put that in for now until we can come up with something more refined. Leave it. I didn't want anyone getting a totally misguided image about me, not that I planned to do anything with the app anyway. I am. Olivia sounded indignant. The last one here is motto. She hovered over the entry field. Got to be a good one. One that doesn't say, lonely, looking for the right man. That just sounds desperate. Olivia, if you have to use a dating app, you are desperate, so it doesn't matter what you put there. She gasped. It does matter what you put here, and it doesn't make you desperate. It just says that you're exploring your options. Now then, let's put a glamorous profile picture of you. Here is where I put my foot down. No, it's my plain old face or nothing at all. It'll still be you. Just a prettier you. What are you saying? I'm not pretty? Of course, you are. We just want it to be the best you. Olivia closed out of the app and handed the phone back to me. Now, you go home, get all gussied up, and take a picture. Chapter 3. The next morning, I tucked an apple in my pocket and headed to the stable at Zeke's ranch. Since Olivia said I could come in late, I decided to take her up on her offer. Star dancer whinnied and stomped her foot excited to see me, or maybe she was simply happy I'd brought her a treat. Hey! Zeke's youngest daughter, Serena, waved at me and crossed from the opposite stall where she'd been brushing her horse. How's my girl? I stroked Star Dancer's neck. I'm great, thanks. Serena chuckled, flipping her auburn braid off her shoulder. That 17-year-old, with her mischievous deep blue eyes, had a quick humor. Dad says anytime you want to buy her back you can. Don't I wish? I touched the star on my horse's forehead. The mare pressed her muzzle into my hand. Serena hopped off the gate rail and crossed over to me. If you can't buy her back, I'll bet Dad would at least let you enter the barrel race with her. I don't even have enough for the entry fee, and I'd never ask your dad to do that. If I had to win, it would be on my own accord. I gave Star Dancer's neck a final pat. I've got to get to work. See ya. Serena waved as I left the barn. When I walked into Sweethearts, my boss was serving Luke, but it looked more intimate, the way she patted his shoulder, brushed a lock of stray hair out of his eyes, almost like she knew him on a more personal level. I shouldn't be jealous. Olivia was more like a mother figure to someone like Luke, besides, she was happily married. In the back office, I dropped off my purse, adjusted my Rodeo Queen pin, and donned the red apron covered in hearts. I waved at the cook as I cut through the kitchen on the way to the galley. Hey Hector. He waved his spatula at me in greeting. Right cowgirl. I laughed. He said that every morning, and it never got old. At least someone knew how to brighten my day. In the galley, Olivia leaned on the counter, her back against the surface. Hey, girl. Did you finish updating your profile? Oh, I'd completely forgotten to do that. More like deliberately ignored it. Here, let me have it. Olivia held out her hand. I tucked my phone inside my apron with no intention of turning it over to her. Really? Since when have you taken over my love life? Did you get any nudges? What are those? I had automatically silenced my phone like I did every night before going to bed. Olivia still held her hand out. Those are when a guy likes your profile and gives you a nudge, like a thumbs up, or a hi, want to meet. You swipe right for yes, left for no. I stuck out my tongue and kept my grip on my phone. Honestly, I'm not interested in dating. Well, you better start. Olivia patted my head like a faithful lapdog. If that picture you showed me is true, then honey, you've got to keep your options open. Besides, the best thing you can do when you get bucked off a horse is get right back on. She wiggled her fingers for me to give her the phone. Let me see it. You don't get bucked off a horse barrel racing. With a sigh of disgust, I handed my phone to Olivia. I'm going to go check on Luke there. I grabbed the pot of coffee and headed to his table, only because I had to get away from Olivia. Customer options were slim since it was after breakfast and the cowboys were all out at the Bar Z. Luke's smile stretched across his face. I wondered if you had today off, but my Miss Olivia assured me you'd be in today. I waved my hand with a flourish. And here I am. Did you already order? Not yet. I was waiting for you. Me? Why? 'Cause I think you're cute. His smile broadened. As a teen, he'd wanted braces, but said his mama couldn't afford them. Now they shone a dazzling white and were perfectly straight. I kind of missed his crooked smile. It had never felt fake. With a slight shake of my head, I refilled his cup. What can I get you? A date to the dance Saturday night. Sorry, I have to mind the restaurant. Luke nodded in Olivia's direction. I talked to your boss, and she said she'd cover your shift if you wanted to go to the dance. She's not my mother, and I don't need her permission. What was Olivia thinking? Setting me up with him? When I turned, Olivia gave me a thumbs up. Really? I moaned. The dating app was bad enough. Olivia grinned like a cherub who'd just shot an arrow through a lover's heart. I swear she's trying to ruin my life. I gritted my teeth and turned back to Luke. What if I told you I already have plans for that night? I'd call you a liar, but I'm a gentleman and would never say that to a lady. I huffed. I'd bet my Aunt Bertha's hind end he would. Luke picked up his menu. Let's see, I'll take a Western omelet, a side of bacon and sausage, a short stack, and a tall glass of orange juice. He held out the menu for me to take. I'm serious about the dance. Would you like to go with me? Let me think about it. I took his order to the wheel and pushed the paper under the clip. Olivia sauntered over to me and held up my phone. Look, you got a thumbs up on your profile. See that? She pointed to the like on my post. Lancaster wants to chat with you. She bumped my elbow with her own. And chatting leads to a date, and a date leads to. Stop already. I put my hand up to shush her. If I was 20 years younger, I'd go out with him. Olivia handed the phone back to me, deliberately showing me the profile with a picture of a mighty fine-looking cowboy, certainly not anybody from around Miracle. It said he was from Peach Springs and in town for the rodeo. Miracle Inn was the only hotel in town, and the cafe was the only restaurant for miles, unless you counted the Greasy Spoon, which was nothing more than a burger joint, so if Lancaster was in town, he'd be showing up here sometime in the next 2 weeks. Olivia poised her finger over the accept icon to nudge him back. I say, let him know you're available. What have you got to lose? I snatched my phone back. I'm not going to do anything. As soon as I tucked the phone in my pocket, a whoop from the lobby shot across the room. I would know that voice anywhere. Sugar. Drew raced through the dining room. What did he want? I'd already told that scumbucket I never wanted to see him again. He took my hand and tried to pull me close. Ah, baby, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us. She don't mean nothin' to me. You're my gal. Please tell me we ain't over. I pointed to the door. Just leave, you two-timing scumbag. Ah, darlin', don't be this way. He took my hand and pulled me to his chest. Struggling against him was like trying to wrestle a determined steer. I don't want anything to do with you. Olivia grabbed his arm. Let her go, Drew. This ain't none your concern, old woman. He shoved her back. She toppled against one of the chairs, landing in the one next to it. The pop of a fist on bone filled the small space. Drew relaxed his hold on me and teetered away from me. Leave these ladies alone. Luke towered over him and held his fist ready to strike again. Drew rubbed his chin, an angry welt blooming on his jaw. This ain't none your business either. His other hand balled into a fist, ready to strike. Celia, the hostess, had entered the area with a phone in hand. You want me to call the sheriff? Drew spun, eyeing each one of us before turning his attention back to me. What? You pit them all against me? My insides tightened closer than my horse racing around a barrel. I told you, we're through. Outnumbered, Drew had no choice but to leave. As he walked out the door, he turned and jabbed his finger in the air at me. We ain't done talkin'. He left with the slamming of the door, the bells of Sweethearts ringing in my ears. I wanted to scream. Instead, I gritted my teeth. I'll welcome that conversation like an outhouse breeze. Olivia stood beside me with her arm wrapped protectively around my shoulder. You tell him, girl.
I hope you enjoyed the first 3 chapters of An Unexpected Blessing. If you'd like to receive the rest of the story, please subscribe to my newsletter at betsylove.com and subscribe to my channel to get more fun content. Have a great day.